I do think that there has been a loss of confidence in major American institutions since President Kennedy was killed, and in particular Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, two of our other great leaders. And what our task is as a nation is to remember the things that we have in common, our shared civic bonds and our common humanity, and that's what I think President Kennedy spoke to. And of course, he was a member of the press himself. He respected the press. He gave one of the great speeches against religious discrimination. He saw the United States as an effective and pragmatic actor in international institutions, which I hope Samantha will talk about. And I think he had a vision of America not only as a powerful military nation, but as a great civilization, great morally, great artistically, the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities, great physically, the President Physical Fitness Challenge, great spiritually, his speech against religious discrimination, and great, the Civil Rights Act. And so his vision of America was America as a great civilization, not as a nationalist nation that just focuses on military spending. And so I hope that we can, restore that vision of America to our current political discourse.
Why have we gone away from that vision of America that John F. Kennedy articulated?
We've drifted away from, look at the speeches of John F. Kennedy and Franklin Roosevelt. We were a nation that could be moved by beautiful oratory that was filled with a sense of optimism and pointing our fingers towards the future where great things can be done, the whole optimistic can-do spirit of the American way. It transcended that kind of language and attitude it had to what our basement-like politics are today. I mean, everybody now are in a kind of a war with, it's like pit bull wars between Democrats and Republicans. Nobody's speaking of unity. Part of it is John F. Kennedy's generation served in the Second World War. Whether you're George Herbert Walker Bush or John F. Kennedy, you had these sort of moments being in uniform and working together with people from different parts of the country. We don't have that kind of shared sense of civic duty anymore that Kennedy was so keen on when he, first 100 days, John F. Kennedy created the Peace Corps. And he started within the Alliance for Progress. And then just shortly after his first 100 days, he went to Congress for a joint session and said, we're going to put a man to the moon by the end of the decade.
You were with the Obama administration for its duration. There was a sense, it seems to me, in 2008, on election night and then thereafter, that perhaps Barack Obama could be a similar kind of figure, in a sense, could speak to some of the things that Doug and Stephen have now spoken about. Is that a fair comment? There was that moment for Obama, would you say?
For some of us, it lasted longer than a moment. Yeah, I think that, as Stephen noted earlier, the most Kennedy-esque speech, according to that definition of shared values and common experience and common aspirations, was the speech in which Barack Obama broke through to our nation around John Kerry's nomination for the Democratic, to be the Democratic candidate in 2004. And that message was this idea that we could find our common destiny, that we had much more in common than we did apart. I think Barack Obama would be the first to say that in a balkanized media environment where World War II is a much more distant memory than it was 15 years before John Kennedy took office, I think we it's fair to say overestimated the possibility of breaking through and of, what critics on the right would say is that we overestimated our mandate and pushed a more progressive agenda than the full country was ready for. But I think my own view is that in a world of alternative facts or alternative truths, and where at least 40% of the country is getting their news from a wholly different galaxy of facts, it is extremely difficult to build that common constituency. And so I share Stephen's aspiration and of course the programmatic ambition that Doug has spoken to, but we somehow have to find a way for us to be operating, a little bit off the same factual predicate.
Well, I have to say that I, like Samantha, had not read many of these speeches. I mean, we all read Kennedy's speeches. They're part of the common currency. But so many of them I hadn't read or certainly meditated over. And there's some of them that I read and I find myself, my eyes welled up. It was quite a thing to be reading these during this moment. This is an odd confluence, and maybe one of serendipity that will be of value, that we are celebrating, really, Kennedy's 100th at this moment, when so many of the things that Kennedy speaks of, have been torn asunder, when we ask ourselves, I think, at this moment, a variety of fundamental questions. It's sort of a calling of the question of government that I think a lot of people feel right now, in fact. What is government's role? What can we do in concert with one another? Is there a way we can find, you might call it a shared national narrative, I suppose? And it's so fascinating now to read some of the speeches and see, in a way, how pragmatic Kennedy is. He talks about institutions. He talks about how government is successful, powerfully. He says, look, this is the job of government. And it's of course housed in this great confidence in the notion of public. That's in every word, not one of doubt, not one of, everything government does is wrong, busted, inefficient, and don't expect anything. And what's so interesting is, I know that, Samantha, I don't know if you were probably in this meeting, but we talk about Obama bringing a great burst of inspiration in Grant Park and in some of those speeches that I think people can cite lines from now. And there was a meeting in August of the first year, that retreat you all did, where people settled in Obama's first year, when he had all that political capital, of course. And they said, what is our goal here? And Obama, I think Favreau and a couple others were riffing. You were, I'm sure, in there, a lot of smart people. And Obama said, I think our goal is to show and prove to the American people that government can be a force of good in their life. Cut right to it, I think. And I think that is at the core of this discussion now. Kennedy is not questioning that. His confidence, and so much of Kennedy is about confidence. He's a World War II guy, and that generation at its first moment grabs power with Kennedy.